All right. Okay, so from an Irish perspective, open data in its current, I guess, form, because like open data in terms of freedom of information, public sector information, has been around for a very long time. But the kind of term that has been coined, open data, has grown in popularity since around 2010, and meaning that public bodies mean putting information out there and making it available for anyone to access. So here in Ireland, around 2010, Irish civil society, local authorities and academia, and this is where I came from for my research background in insight in NUI Galway, started to promote open data and engage with the international community, and basically put pressure on the government to join in the open data, have an open data program, encourage agencies to make data available. The first Irish local authority open data portal was launched, and it was from Fingal County Council. It was very forward thinking, data.fingal.ie, and they published information from their local authority. Now that, I guess, movement grew, and in 2014, the Irish government put in place the Irish National Open Data Portal, data.gov.ie, that was launched, and we were working on that together with them in Insight. And they also launched a technical framework for publishers, and that goes back to the previous question, and that really gave guidance on, well, how should they be publishing information. So basically, it's not just a website with a load of PDFs, because as we discussed before, that's not useful if we want to actually use the data and analyze it ourselves. From a governance perspective, in 2015, the Open Data Governance Board was established, and that included members not only from not really from kind of within government, but from business, from academia, from civil society, across the board, to provide guidance around, well, how to drive the open data program itself. And in 2017, well, the open data strategy was launched from 2017 to 2022, and that, I guess, was the remit of the Open Data Governance Board to oversee the implementation of that strategy. And since then, so since 2017, Ireland has also been internationally recognised as a leader in open data. So there's an annual European Open Data Maturity Index, and Ireland has ranked first, second, or third in that since 2017. From a strategy perspective, I'll talk about that later on, but as you can see, 2022 is upon us now, so a new strategy is being defined at the moment for the coming years. At the moment, we have 146,000, sorry, that's actually wrong, it's 14,000 data sets have been published. The Irish Open Data Statutory Instrument is in place, and I'll talk about that from a legal perspective, and that's really important, again, for driving that open data isn't just a nice to have, but it's something that public bodies now have to do. And the open data procurement framework is in place, so it's easier for government agencies to procure services around open data as well, so they're more likely to do it. Okay, and yeah, as I said, so Ireland has been an open data leader in Europe and also internationally. So in the OECD Open Government Data Index, we've ranked third globally as well. So this is our open data platform, datagov.ie. You've heard me refer to it a couple of times already. Let's see where we are. Yep. So this is really the website or the portal that people can go to access the information, and we'll have a little explore around that later on. So this is where all of the information sources are. So if you're looking for any information from any government agency, this would be kind of your first port of call. And the way that it can do that is that the data itself isn't published on this. This isn't the big data warehouse or anything like that. It only contains the metadata that points to the information from the actual data owners. So it harvests it from a number of different sources, from Health Ireland, from Ordnance Survey. Ordnance Survey, of course, a huge producer of geospatial information. Smart Dublin from the 4 Dublin local authorities, from the Central Statistics Office, again, a huge collection of statistical information, of very high quality statistical information, Department of Housing, National Transport, Marine Institute, and across the board. So there is 159 different publishers at the minute, and where possible, we try and keep that up to date through automated updates, harvesters, so that it's not reliant on one person manually updating or adding metadata about that. So really, kind of, if you're looking for any information, this is the first place to go. Okay, yeah, no questions. Okay, so how is open data published? So this goes a little bit into the technical elements of it. So back in 2015, when the original technical framework was published, these were the recommendations. So that data had to be published using an open license. There were particular recommended formats for open data, a recommended metadata schema, standards, and that they use unique resource identifiers. And I'll explain those in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the most important thing is that it's accessible online, right? That you can go in, that you can type in either a web address, a URL, or an API address and get access to that information straight away, that you don't have to email anyone, or you don't have to have it sent, or have a CD to download it, so that the data is accessible online. The second is that it's associated with an open license. And this again is really key for the transparency, that a user can use it for whatever purpose that they want. If data is available online and there's not a clear license associated with, then there's always going to be a question mark of, can I use it for this purpose? Okay, I'll use it for this maybe project that I'm doing for college, but can I use it in my application, or can I use it for this study, or can I publish about it? So if there's a clear license, then there's no ambiguity around that. And the recommended license, which still is today, is attribution. It's the Creative Commons attribution license, and that means that it can be used for any purpose by anyone, as long as you just attribute or acknowledge the original source. So just say, this is where I got the information from, and link to it, so that other people can follow back to the raw data as well. Making the information available in open machine readable formats. So you might have seen or kind of heard around the star rating around open data. And this is really what it means. It means how easy is the data to reuse. So at the bottom here, 1 star is something like PDF. Okay, it's accessible online. You can read the information. Maybe it's a table within a PDF, but it's not easy to reuse. 2 star, we're looking at, okay, it's in a machine readable format, for example, Excel, but that's proprietary. So that's associated with a Microsoft license, right? Or Microsoft format. So there might be some, like if you look at it, think of an Excel sheet that has colors, that has styling, that has all of that. That isn't easy to, for a machine or a computer to process that. So if something is highlighted in yellow, that means nothing to a computer, okay? They need it to be in a different format. So something like CSV is a clear table. So 3 star is really what we're going for. So if a table, and I'll show you again in the examples when we look at later on, it just means that in each cell, there's an individual data item that has a meaning inherent within that and doesn't need additional formatting around that. 4 and 5 star, you're looking at linked data around RDF, including URIs, which is great. But listen, 3 star is what the majority of the data sets as open data is produced at, and it's sufficient for most of the use as well. And of course, so there's lots of different types of information. So tabular data, what we're looking at is CSV data. But then if you're looking at other structured data, JSON is a great format, XML and some others here. Geospatial data is very popular. So the open geospatial formats, we're looking at GeoJSON, OGC, GML, KML. Listen, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have heard of these before or not, but these are kind of the recommended formats for open data, and for the purpose that they're easy to reuse and they're not proprietary. And then for domain specific, so you have some maybe formats that are specific to statistical information or to transport information, for example. So that open data is associated with a standard metadata. So metadata is really key to everything, right? So if you have what metadata is a description about the data set. What is this data set? What's its title? What is it about? When was it created? Who's the contact point? Are there some keywords around it? What's it related to? How can I find out more information? This is all metadata, information about the data set. And this is all that's contained on data.gov.ie and a number of open data portals as well. And this is what's used a lot of the time for searching, for finding the information, for grouping, for filtering. So it's really key to have background information or context about the information, because I'm sure you've all kind of been faced with a data set goes, well, what does this mean? And what's this column? And where's this? And when is this from 10 years ago or last week? So metadata is really key for that. And the recommended standard for that, so that everyone, basically we want everyone to describe their metadata in the same way, is the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium Data Catalog Vocabulary, DCAT. So if you hear DCAT, we're talking metadata. And Heather, you asked a question earlier on about all the acronyms and the standardization that I'm involved in. And this is it. So it's basically helping with the standardization of things like the metadata. So should we say keyword? Should we say theme? Should we include the issue date, the modification date, the whatever else? These kind of working groups that agree this is what this standard is. So this would be one of the things that I would have been involved in. Just see a question here. And who owns the data and is responsible as in the content? Okay, cool. So, sorry, I'll read that properly. So whoever's not reading it in the chat. So Paul Phelan has asked, can I ask who owns the data and has responsibility for that data, as in content and quality check, to ensure the data published is correct? The data owner always owns the data. So Creative Commons, the license says that, so the copyright is always with the data owner themselves. So in the case of the public bodies, they publish information. So for example, Central Statistics Office publishes statistical information on economic and financial matters. So they publish that, and they have their own very stringent statistical checks to make sure that it's at a particular level that it can be published, that no individuals are identifiable within that, but also that it's correct information. So the original publishers of the data are always the data owners and are responsible for the quality that goes out. Okay, I see loads of questions coming in. I'll go through it. What time are we at? 7:40. While researching for a potential open data source to use, how can we know if the data is standard? Okay, so all data sets on data.gov.ie have their metadata described in DCAT. So their metadata is defined. Now that doesn't mean that the data itself is standardized. So whatever data model they're using to structure their data internally, again, that's the responsibility of the data publisher. So DCAT is only referring to metadata. And then whatever data model they're using, if they are, that will be described in the metadata. So it'll say, okay, what standard do you use? For example, the National Transport Authority will publish data according to the general GTFS, General Transit Format, I think, specification, but a transport transport standard. Are they all government or semi-government? Yeah, so data.gov.ie only, it's a government portal, so it only publishes data from government bodies or a semi-state, yeah. So not private. Anyone that's covered by the National Open Data Directive, and I'll talk about that later. So there is some open data from private organizations, but they would publish that themselves, maybe on their own websites or their own portals. But data.gov.ie is only government or public sector bodies. Okay, so I think that's all the chat or all the questions. Okay, so here is, okay, yeah, so I'm talking about the technical framework, and these are the recommended practices. So as you can see, these were the recommended practices. On the left, this was the original data portal from 2015, and this is how it looks now. So there's been a lot of changes, right? And accordingly, there's also been a lot of changes in in the data world, how people want data, use data, real-time, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and so on. So how we publish data has to evolve as well. So what we were getting before was a lot of once-off CSVs. So basically a data set, one data file that'll be uploaded and kind of forgotten about. And that's no good, right? If you want to actually do kind of some really kind of exciting, innovative things with the data. So we last year published a revised open data publishing guidelines, and here we focus on recommending best practices that ensure the discoverability and accessibility of the data, empower people to understand and use the data, support increased public service transparency, drive evidence-based decision-making and innovation, and ultimately enable measurable impact. So that's what we want. So the original recommendations still stand. but so they're all available online, and I'm sure Heather will share these slides. So I've included links and everything so that you can follow up yourselves as well on them. But we've extended it to 22 recommendations that go into a little bit more detail, right? So as well as providing metadata that's DCAT compliant, we're saying, okay, we want to ensure that you provide accurate time frame metadata, enable the geolocation of data. If you can, use trusted identifiers to link data sets, use data standards to model the data if there are data sets for your domain, and exactly what that previous question was saying, or that previous question on the chat was saying. So really all of these, and the guidelines go into detail and examples for each of these recommendations, and these are targeted at the data publishers to say, okay, if you're publishing data, don't just do kind of a once-off CSV, convert Excel CSV, doesn't really make sense, but sure, we'll just put it out there. But really think about publishing information that's easy to use, that's kept up to date, and that makes it as reusable as possible. And as a result, so currently on data.gov.ie, 58% of data sets are available via APIs, and we want to see that figure increasing, right? Because we want machine accessible data as much as possible. So APIs, for those who don't know, is a way that applications or computers can tap into the data. So instead of me, a person, going to a website and manually clicking into something, that if I write an application, such as the Journey Planner, that you can programmatically access that information. So it might ping it every minute to say, okay, what's the best route here and now, or whatever.